Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what Biden and his administration's goals are regarding the ATF and their very controversial nomination of Chipman to head the ATF. And I want to talk about it because I think one of their supporters kind of spilled the beans this week on CNN about what they're really wanting to do by getting Chipman approved. If you're not familiar with Charles Ramsey, he is an ex-police chief in one of the nation's larger cities. He's been an administration advisor. He's CNN's head law enforcement consultant or something like that. He's kind of a big name in politics as far as law enforcement is concerned. And during a CNN interview the other day, he made it very clear that he thinks it's time that the ATF moves immediately to confirm Chipman. It needs to be done right away so that he can get to work. And then he kind of went on to say some things that kind of made it clear what he means by get to work. Now, I'm going to read his statement here because I don't want to fudge it up in translation here. So I'm going to read it verbatim from the transcript of that CNN show. Here's what he says. Right after he says that Chipman needs to be nominated immediately, needs to be approved immediately so he can get to work, he says, in many instances, people are being arrested for illegally carrying a gun or using a gun to commit a crime, and there's very little in terms of consequences, which right off the bat, he's creating a falsehood. How many times have you seen people arrested for committing crimes with a firearm and they don't get any trouble? They're just like, okay, go home. No, it doesn't really happen. In most places, even if you commit a minor crime, if a firearm's involved, it bumps it up to a major crime. So I don't see this actually being true. But the reason he's trying to create this falsehood is because it goes on to support his notion afterwards. So he creates this falsehood. He says they are not being held, and there are some people that do need to be incarcerated, period. Well, here's a notion, Mr. Lawman. Incarcerate the ones that do something that requires an incarceration. If you arrest someone for something gun-related that you can't legally put them in jail for, then they ain't done anything wrong. And apparently he has a problem with this. Like, they'll pick people up for just possessing a gun, and it turns out, we got nothing we can charge them with. Oh my God, we have to let these people go that didn't commit a crime. So right off the bat there, he's creating a false situation where people that actually commit crimes with guns are just being let go and nothing's happening to them. Not true at all. What he's upset about is people who get picked up on gun-related things and then they have nothing they can charge them with because they didn't actually commit a crime other than possessing a firearm. And then he goes on, and what he says here is, so based on what he just said, he says, so we certainly need to have an alternative to incarceration. And I didn't hear anything about that. He's talking about from Biden's speech on what he's going to do about gun crime in this country. With that funding, hopefully mayors and others will use that funding for the people who don't need to be incarcerated to be able to keep tabs on and to be able to monitor them and what they're doing. So in other words, he wants Chipman and the ATF to work with states with this additional funding the federal government is going to be giving them to create a system where if someone has a gun and the police know they have a gun, but they haven't committed a crime that they can actually incarcerate them for or charge them with, they can put them into a system that monitors them, that keeps track of them. It makes them a person of interest, even though they've committed no crimes. It's basically like a no-fly list. I'm sure once you get on it, it'll take nothing to get on it other than someone just sticking you on there. But once you're on it, you'll never be able to get off of it unless you hire an attorney and spend thousands of dollars. And this is just a red flag. Not even a red flag. This is just an admission of what they want to do is basically create not only a registration of all firearms, because they definitely want every gun to go through 4473. That way they have a record of every person who owns a gun, private sale whatsoever. But then if they consider that person to be someone who could potentially need to be incarcerated, that they can put them into a system where they can monitor them, track them, know where they're at, know what they're doing, maybe preemptively police them, tap their phones, monitor their emails, all kinds of things that the government's not supposed to do. But they'd have special permission in this case because that person has got a gun. And remember, he said, well, we can't incarcerate them, but we need to do something for the ones we can't incarcerate. No, you don't. If they didn't commit a crime, you don't need to do anything. That whole statement you said about the ones committing crimes with guns that aren't getting any trouble and aren't being incarcerated, that's bullshit. You create a fake scenario to try to make people sympathetic to your second point so that they wouldn't go, wait, why do we need to register people that aren't committing crimes? So that right there is something to really be worried about. That's why everyone needs to strongly oppose the Chipman confirmation. And here's a little bit of something I'm going to say right now. If you live in West Virginia, don't let Joe Manchin go one day without receiving 100,000 phone calls telling him that if he votes for Chipman, you'll never vote for him again. Likewise, if you have a moderate Democrat in your state, which there aren't a whole lot of them anymore, but Manchin is the number one thing we need to hit right now because he could be the difference here. He could be the one that stops this nomination. He just came out of committee with a 10-10 vote, but I'm getting conflicting reports. I'll go into that later in another thing about Chipman, but getting conflicting reports about whether he's going to a full Senate vote right away or not, but never is too early to start hitting Manchin up if you live in West Virginia with if you don't oppose this guy, fuck you, basically. Because, like I said, that's their goal. That's the Biden administration goal. That's why they want Chipman, because they know he'll make the move to set up these registries, these monitorings. You know, it'll be basically like an NSA whose whole job is to keep track of who owns guns and what they're doing, and should we preemptively arrest them. That's what they want. They want a national registration, and they want to violate the civil rights of any person who owns a firearm. And they want the fact that, because they know it's going to be called out as that's a violation of civil rights, well, they're going to want to be able to say, well, much like the Patriot Act did, this will give us an excuse to violate people's civil rights because they're potential terrorists, because they own a gun. Or the police picked them up for owning a gun, or saw them open carrying, or saw them concealed carrying. That'd be enough. Hell, if they just said, well, this guy bought 3 guns in a month, we're going to have to go investigate him. Well, all they got to do is show up at your door and say, hey, did you buy 3 guns? And you go, yeah. And they go, okay. Well, they can walk away and say, this is a person of interest. Let's put him on that list. Let's get him under surveillance. Let's get his wires tapped. That's the kind of thing they'll be able to do. And for someone who says, oh, they're not going to bother to do all that stuff, yeah, pay attention to what happened after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and what's still going on. In fact, we're getting to a position now where the administration has said that they want to enter into paid agreements with companies to turn over information on people. Spying's one thing where they have to go to court and get a court order and say, hey, you got to turn over all this information to us and the Patriot Act says you have to. That's one thing. But setting up something preemptively that says, hey, for every name you give us of interest, we'll give you $50. You know, if they turn over 100,000 names a month, they make a whole lot of money. That's a different thing altogether. That gives companies incentive to find something that makes you suspicious. So this administration is in love with this whole idea of being able to monitor gun owners. That's their end goal. They want every gun registered. They want to know who owns what and where they are at any given day. They want to be able to monitor these people, subvert under the radar. I can't get the word out right now. I have a little bit of a stammer, I think some people know, and sometimes I get stuck on a word. Subversively. I don't even know if that's a word or not, but I had trouble getting it out. They want to be able to do all that stuff. They want to create an environment where simply by owning a gun, you are a person of interest. You're somehow a potential criminal simply because you possess firearms. That's like saying you're a potential drunk driver if you own a car. And therefore they should be able to put a monitor on your ankle or a mechanism on your car that you can't start it unless you blow into it because, hey, we know you bought a car and we heard a report that you drank a beer 6 months ago. So, you know, there's potential there. We wouldn't accept anything like that, but they're trying to sell that about gun owners. So I just wanted everyone, keep your eyes open. I think they have not only kind of signaled their intent, they basically spelled it out, said it on live television here. So don't be surprised when this is what they try to do if Chipman gets not approved. So like I said, everyone, stand up, oppose Chipman, especially in West Virginia. Let Joe Manchin know that if he votes for Chipman, as far as you're concerned, he's done. All right, everybody, with that being said, I want to move on to my favorite part of the show, gun talk. And today I want to answer a question from a viewer. They sent me a question the other day saying, during your live chat today, you were talking about guns having recessed cylinders. You were talking about revolvers is what we were talking about. What does that mean? They're basically asking me in the email. What is a recessed cylinder? What's the difference between a recessed cylinder and a non-recessed cylinder? Well, it's really easy. Recessed cylinders are very rare nowadays. In fact, my Kimber K6S is one of the few modern guns I have that has it. But a recessed cylinder is just where they take the extra effort with the cylinder. It fits tighter in the gun, and it's actually bored out for the rim to have a place to sit down inside flush with the cylinder. On guns that are non-recessed, that little back part of the bullet, the rim on the actual cartridge, sits on top of the back of the cylinder. It doesn't sit into the cylinder. And it makes a big difference as far as looks, especially because when you close it with the recessed cylinders, you don't really see the bullets. You see a smaller seam and you see nothing else. With the regular non-recessed, you see the rims, all of them. It looks a little sloppier. Now, some people like being able to see the rims of the bullet. Some people think that that looks cooler. I'm fine with it. I think it looks decent. But just, it's hard to beat a nice recessed cylinder. They just look so nice. And like I say, the Kimbers, the K6S is one of the few guns I know of nowadays that still does it. There are a few guns that still do it, but most Smiths are just flat face. Most Rugers, flat face cylinder. Just it's the way they do it now. And like I say, I'm not saying that's bad, especially if you have moon clips, because if you have moon clips and a gun is moon clip capable, that's actually, easier to do if it's a flush cylinder, because if it's a recessed cylinder, then you got to cut even further in for the moon clip, so it's a little more work. But that's the whole thing in total. It is more work to make recessed cylinders. It's not as cheap and as easy to make a nice recessed cylinder, plus it has to fit better when you put it in the gun. So most gun manufacturers don't do it. Just the companies that want to take a little extra attention to detail. Like I believe Kimber did it simply because, hey, we're new to the gun market, so we want to make it as good as we can, or the revolver market, I mean. We want to make as good a revolver as we can make so that it stands out from the rest. That's why I think they did it. And I'm glad they did because I love it. It's really nice. But that's the difference. I don't know if it'll make a difference to you or not. You might actually like when you can see the rims of the cartridges. Some people do. It does add a little bit of interest. But me personally, I like a recessed cylinder that sits more flush with less of a seam. It just shows a little bit more of attention to detail, and I'm a big fan of that. All right, everybody, I want to end the show today with our pet rescue of the day, and I'm going to combine it with our EDC of the day, our viewer EDC of the day, because the person we're going to talk about today is doing both. He sent me pictures for both. First, we've got Elvis, the coon hound. And Elvis was rescued by Travis C., who lives in West Virginia. Let's see, Travis lives in West Virginia. He has a coon hound. I think we all know what that means. Travis is the R word. And by that I mean redneck. Obviously a redneck. And no, coon hound is not a derogatory term. I hear people say it all the time. That's just what they are. They go after raccoons. Raccoons. So don't come at me with bullshit about that. But beautiful dog. The picture's a little dark, but still, beautiful dog. He was rescued quite a while ago when he was like a year and a half old. So he was an adult dog when they got him. That's awesome. I love seeing people adopt adult dogs. Also, Travis sent me a picture of his carry gun, which surprised me because it's an awesome choice. He's carrying a Beretta PX4 Storm Inox in an alien gear inside waistband holster. Great choice, which is really surprising because those guns didn't come out till like 2003, 2004. And last time I was in West Virginia a couple years ago, it was still 1982. So it must have progressed a lot since I was there last. Or at least maybe he actually goes outside the state line. I'm pretty sure you go through a time warp when you go across the state line if you go north. Then maybe that's where he got his gun. But just wanted to say thank you and congratulations to Travis for being a good person and giving an adult dog in need a good home. And I want to say congratulations to Elvis for quite a while ago finding your forever home in that redneck family in West Virginia. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back again tomorrow. Until then, I just want to sign off as usual by saying, as far as the state of the world is concerned today, it is what it is. It could be a lot worse, but it could also be better. And if we as a community, start to recognize that certain people out there are just profiteers and propagandists and, fear mongers who just want to manipulate you to serve their own financial interests instead of the interests of the Second Amendment, if we start to call those people out and ignore them, then what things will be in the very near future for people who believe in the Second Amendment and in freedom in general is better.